Today I'm speaking with Jerry Park. His family was longtime residents of Santa Cruz County. He's going to talk to us today about a lot of the history from Santa Cruz County and the Mountain Charlie area where his family had a ranch at one time. He'll be telling us some stories about his family and about the area, and also he'll give us a little bit about his background as an educator and artist.
Okay.
I did want to mention that Carolyn Fitz is a good friend of mine, and she's the one who, I guess she met you at a function not too long ago. And
calligraphy group.
Yeah, and she's quite an artist in her own right.
She's good.
Excellent calligrapher. And she and you got to talking about the history of Scotts Valley and the Santa Cruz area. And so she recommended that I contact you and hear some stories about your family history up there.
Okay, we're here.
Yeah. And you didn't grow up in the Santa Cruz area. You actually grew up in the Central Valley. Is that right?
Yes, I was basically my middle childhood was in Palo Alto. My mother and her family moved there from. Her mother was born in the mountains. My grandmother was born in the cabin at Santa Cruz, right? And so when her daughter, my mother Muriel, married her daughter, Bessie was born in the cabin, and she married Rome's, and he was a butcher. He worked in the Atherton area. He had first one of the butchers to have a truck instead of horses. So he would go to like the Flood Estate and the various other wealthy people that lived in Atherton and take them fresh meat. They didn't have ways to preserve meat in those days very well. And so she married him, and he had a little ranch there in Palo Alto and raised chickens and eggs. When he got married, he decided he wanted to be around his family. And so that's where my mother was born. And so she had gone after college back to the South and met my father in Tennessee. And so they married and they lived in St. Paul, Virginia, and then in Marshalltown, Iowa. And then when Grandpa's health failed, she came out in 1948 to be with her mother and Grandpa. And so from 48 to 57, that's where I lived. So that was my childhood that I really remember, is Palo Alto area. I went to Menlo Atherton High School, graduated there, and then went to San Jose State. I got my credential and got a job teaching art at Patterson High School over in the valley. And so I was there 39 years and retired from that, and then moved over here to the Carmel, Monterey Bay area, so about 10 years ago. So that's my personal history. And so I never did live in the mountains, but every time we would come over to Santa Cruz from Palo Alto, Mom would point across the canyon and say, "That's the old ranch where Grandma was born and where your history started." So that's why I'm here.
And that's the Schultheis?
Schultheis Ranch. Yeah, Schultheis. And he started the ranch, he and Mountain Charlie. Mountain Charlie was the first one, talked to great-great-grandpa Schultheis, told him that there was mountain room up in the mountain, a beautiful place, and you could just homestead it. And the valley, all Santa Clara Valley and all that area was already pretty settled. It had all been previously part of the missions or the Mexican land grants, and they were having all kinds of hassles with who owns this and who owns that, and you got the grant and you got a chunk of land, and so he didn't want to have any part to do with that. He could go to the mountains, get free land, and he wouldn't have any questions about it. So that's why he settled up there in the mountains.
Okay, and about what time?
1850.
Okay.
Mountain Charlie built his place in 1850. My great-great-grandfather built his place in 1851. And the log cabin is still there. It's the oldest continually inhabited building home in the mountains. It's still people living in it right now.
Wow, yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, so that's the history of it. The area is virtually untouched. Nobody's come in and built big apartment houses or subdivided or anything. It's still very much like it is. In fact, currently they're trying to make a museum out of the old cabin. And hopefully it will, they've come under the umbrella of the Loma Prieta Museum right now. But they hope to get their own museum. And he hosts, Roger Mason is the owner of it now, and he hosts school children coming up to it. He gives them tours of it, presses apples from it, makes cider for them, and college kids come up. So it's already got quite a footprint for community use, but it's still private and still a functioning fruit orchard.
Okay, great. And the Loma Prieta Museum, that's up there just off of the old San Jose?
I guess I've never been there myself personally.
I'm just wondering if it's where they used to have a school there, a grade school, and I wonder if that's maybe the same location.
Very likely, yes, yeah. I don't know.
But I'm going to go up there and find out.
Okay. You'll have to research that yourself. I don't know.
So how did your grandfather and Mountain Charlie knew each other?
Well, they met somewhere in San Jose or Los Gatos, I assume. And they're just young kids, out trying to find something to do with life. And so they said, there's all kind of land up here. Just go, if you build a place and live on it, it's yours. And so can't beat that. So he did. He built a log cabin, and then his wife came and they got married. And before that, it was all just a horse trail or an animal trail or Indian trail up to the hills. And so when he got married, he wanted to take some furniture and a few things to live with in his cabin. So he bought an ox cart and loaded it up to go take his wife up to the mountain. And it took him 3 days to get from Los Gatos to the mountain, because all it was a 18-inch trail for a horse or a person to walk. And he had to hack it all out to get the oxen and the cart through. So yeah, it's quite primitive.
Yeah, that was before there was Highway 17 or
before
Old
there
San
was
Jose Road or any of that.
That was when the Indians had Highway 17, the only highway they had. That was it. And then there was a little, right at the crest, right at the park, right at the top, right where Grandpa Schultheis moved, was a lagoon, and that's where the Indians would stop and rest and have water, and it was their little oasis. And so the lagoon is still there. Yeah.
So where was the lagoon? Was it down near where Lexington Reservoir is?
No. It's way up right at the summit.
Oh.
Yeah, it's right up there, right on the ranch. It's about 100 yards from the log cabin. That's why he built there, because there was water there. And there's a spring that feeds it, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, then I had always heard that Mountain Charlie was on the stagecoach route, or that
Well, he built the roads in there. There was no stagecoach route in those days. Nobody lived up there in 1850.
Okay.
So there may have been a horse path or something from Los Gatos to Santa Cruz, but I have no idea what it was. It wasn't anything very passable.
Right.
And then he put in a toll road from his place at the top, clear down to Scott's place in Scotts Valley, I guess it was.
Right.
And so then eventually, I have a rubbing of it. Eventually, as the civilization progressed, the city boards and county boards and whoever was in charge bought it out and turned it into a public road. And so Mountain Charlie and Scott's. Mountain Charlie moved to San Jose and lived there, Los Gatos, the rest of his life. And his cabin's still there right now. It's decrepit, but it's still there. There's a marker for it. I have a rubbing of it too.
Oh, good. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll get a picture of that.
Okay.
Because, yeah, I actually took my kids up there one time.
Okay, you've seen it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's not too far off of Highway 17.
No, it's probably a mile and a half at the most.
Yeah.
It's kind of a treacherous little windy mountain road, but
yeah,
you can get there.
Yeah. That's a secret back road that I was telling you about.
Oh, is that it?
Yeah,
okay.
That's where Mount Charlie Road comes up, and I think it hits Bear Creek, where Bear Creek comes in and goes along the summit. And,
okay.
Yeah, or drops down.
That sure could be. Well, it looked like a lot of Christmas tree farms up there last time I was there.
Yes.
Kind of in the valley and on the hills. So
yeah.
I don't know who owns it now or what, but
yeah.
The cabin's still there, and there's a marker in front of it.
Okay. And then your grandparents' cabin was on the other side of Highway 17.
The other side, right on the border of the Santa Clara and the Santa Cruz county line, right on the crest of the hill area.
And is it on the San Jose side of Summit Road then?
I think it's the Santa Clara side. The ranch per se now, yeah. It's to the east side of that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where then now kids can still go and you can make an appointment and go up there and.
Yes. Well, they have it open. I have a printout of it. They have it open all the time. There's a little sign on the road, and all the summertime when there's fruit, you drive in and it's just a honor system. Take however many pears you want and weigh them out, and if it's so and so amount per pear, you put your money in the box and go home with it. So it's still a functioning ranch. Yeah.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah, and that building that you go in is part of the original ranch. It's where my grandfather's original major money was French prunes. And so they had acres of prunes, and then they would lay them out and dry them, and then soak them in some solution to soften the skins. And so that building is still there that they used for the prune house, prune yard. And there's one other building was their woodshed or something that's still there. It's totally original. The house fell down during the earthquake, and so they demolished it. But the cabin's still there. And the cabin did get moved off the foundation a little bit. And Roger Mason is a contractor, so he righted it and got it back on its foundation. But it's still there. Yeah.
Well, so seems to me there was a story about Mountain Charlie and your grandmother. Mountain Charlie was hunting and had a close encounter with a bear.
Yeah, that's Mountain Charlie's, his famous claim to fame is the bear, surviving that. McKibben was his name, Charles McKibben. And he and I think it was Scott were out hunting, and they got 3 deer. And then coming back, I guess the bear smelled a deer or something and came after him. So they went to get the bear, and Scott missed, and I guess Mountain Charlie, they just wounded it anyway, and the bear didn't drop. So got a hold of Mountain Charlie, and according to the thing, it bit his whole scalp off. Punctured his skull, had a chunk of the skull was gone. And my great-great-grandmother, Susan Byerly, she was the midwife for the whole area up there. And she rode a horse over across to Mountain Charlie's when she learned about it, and kept him alive until a doctor could come from either Los Gatos or San Jose and patch him up a bit. And then I guess that night the doctor got a Mexican silver peso or whatever it would have been, and pounded it out and made a cup shape that they could place over the skull hole. And I think he lived for another year or so with that, and he'd gotten get really terrible headaches and pain, and so the doctors came back and took it off and found he had a wad of hair down in there, and it was giving him all kinds of problems. So they moved that out, put him a new plate in, and he lived another 40 or 50 years. I think he raised 7 kids, 5 or 7 kids. Yeah, he always wore his hat way down over his brow so that you wouldn't see the deformity he had of his bear encounter. But yeah, there's a painting of him down still. Don't know who the artist was, but that's the painting. That's where he got his fame. So I'm sure he would have died if my great-great-grandmother hadn't been there to be a midwife and a support to help keep him alive.
Right. Yeah. So, and do you know where the painting is? Is it in Scottsdale?
I have the information, but I've never seen it myself. I've seen copies of it, but not the original. Okay. And the artist is unknown. Don't know who did it, but it's around.
All right, I'll check with Jay Topping probably.
Yeah, we'll have to research it.
Yeah. So Carolyn was telling me too that so it was your great-great-grandmother, and she was a midwife, and so she would travel.
Yeah,
by horseback.
Yeah, she was the only person that had any idea of any medical kind of stuff. So she was kind of the go-to person if you broke your finger or had a cut or got bit by a pig or something. You call Susan Schulthies. Yeah. So she was a tough woman. She'd get on a horse and ride anywhere in the middle of the night or in the rain or whatever to help people. Amazing person. Well, she lost 2 kids before she came here from back east, and had a 3rd kid when she came to California. And she drove a major stagecoach, or I don't know, 4-team horse thing or something, with the covered wagons when they came out. And she brought her 5-year-old kid that was still alive. She'd lost 2 kids before. Brought him across on the stage, on the covered wagon train, and came on the gold rush thing with all the other pioneers, and then met her husband over here and settled down and lived up in the mountains. She was the first white woman to reside in the mountains up there. Yeah. Wow.
And the closest thing they had to a doctor, it sounds like.
That she was it, unless you come from Los Gatos or or San Jose to get a doctor.
Huh.
Yeah. Amazing woman.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, I have her obituary. I found that. So I have a copy of that for you.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
So I was thinking too, 1850s, so your great-great-grandfather came out as part of the gold rush.
Yeah, that was a gold rush, and found out that it wasn't all it was cracked up to be, and that land was where it was, and you could farm and make money, and so he got his homestead up there and stayed the rest of his life. Yeah. Okay, the other one that's quite legendary is one that the owner of the ranch now, Roger Mason Taylor Ranch, says was that, and it's in one of the books too, I hear, of 3 guys coming through from Australia that were criminals, and they'd been in San Francisco. I don't know if they escaped from being deported to Australia or whatever, but anyway, they were raising havoc in San Francisco, and so the posse was after them. And Grandma was in the, great-great-grandma was in the kitchen, and these 3 guys come running in with the guns and said, "Feed us, we're hungry. Gotta get something to eat." So she scared something up for them, and they woofed it down and split fast as they could. And a few minutes later, or half hour, however long, the posse showed up and asked if they'd seen anybody around here they didn't know. And she said, "Well, yeah, I just got held up by 3 guys and fed them, and which way did they go?" So she pointed out they went that way, and so they took off, and a few hours later they showed up and says, "Well, it won't be bothering you anymore. We found them, we shot them, put them by the side of the road, and the bears will eat them up. They won't be bothering you anymore." So anyway, that's kind of a blood and guts story, but that's true, I guess.
Yeah, back in the day, they didn't bother with a trial or anything.
No. They finished the job without any taxpayer money going to.
And I guess, they're pretty sure there are only so many Australian guys running around the mountains, so
I don't know.
it wouldn't take in a very long trial anyway.
No, I guess it wouldn't. Anyway, that's you wanted a story. That's the story I heard from Roger. So
yeah,
kind of a
great.
Off the book story. Maybe it's in the books. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, we'll put it on the books.
Yeah, whether it's true or not. Huh?
Yeah.
Well, I have the gun, and I'm sure I can't prove it, but my grandmother, that, like I said, that was born in the cabin, her brother, Fred Averill, when I went to San Jose State, my mom knew the family members and all, and so I was accepted at San Jose State. So Uncle Fred lived in Los Gatos. So she called him up, and he was in his 80s, and asked if I could stay with him while I went to college. And he said, "Yeah, sure, it'd be great to have some company and have a family member here." So I moved into Uncle Fred's place in Los Gatos out there on Blossom Hill Road for about a year in my junior year. So that was 1960, about 1959 and 60. And during that time, his health was failing, and so one time he was not doing good, so I took him to the hospital, and he never came back. He died at 82. And so the rest of the family were all settled, and they were older, and anyway, and so they had no idea what to do with his house other than sell it and divide up the money. So I was living in it. And so he said, "Well, you got a month to get out of here." And then I asked him what's going to happen with all this stuff in the house, and he would just auction it off or whatever. So my mom said, "Well, offer him $50 for everything in the house. I said, well, okay, that's a good idea. So I offered him $50, and he said, sure, yeah, help yourself. Anything in the house, got a month to get it out. So I went through the house with a fine-tooth comb and got up in the attic and found guns sitting up there across the beams of the attic. And so I was like, wow, this is interesting. And so there were 3 guns. There was a little 22 with an octagon barrel, there was a 32-40 with an octagon barrel, and there was a old cap and ball rifle, heavy sucker, and pieces around different parts. And so I got them all out, and so I took the one of them had cartridge stuck in it, and I had a gunsmith fix that. Anyway, I took all the pieces from the cap and ball, went to college, and so in some of the classes we cleaned it up, and stupid kids, we varnished it and did all the, try to make it look nice. But anyway, we got all the pieces together, and I have the gun, and I am sure that my great uncle, Uncle Fred, had saved it from the family and put it up in his attic so it didn't get lost when they sold the ranch. And I can't prove it, but I would bet almost anything that great-great-grandpa Schultheis carried that gun up with his oxen that 3 days coming from Los Gatos to the summit, because that would have been the only guns available in those days. And why would it have been in Uncle Fred's place if it wasn't from the family? And who would he have gotten it from if it wasn't from my great-great-grandfather? And that's what they used to hunt bears, these giant heavy guns. That's all they had in those days, to beat bows and arrows. And so Mountain Charlie out hunting, same thing with a cap and ball or flintlock, probably cap and ball by then. And you get one shot, and it takes you about 30 seconds to reload, and if a bear's within 30 seconds of you, you might not make it. So anyway, I have that gun here, and I just...
Oh, you got it here?
I showed it one time at the last ranch. They have every year they have at the Summit Ranch, my great-great-grandfather's ranch there, they have a fundraiser for the museum, and they harvest festival, and so they invite me back every year. And I finally took the gun up last year and showed that first time anybody's seen it for 100 years probably. So anyway, that's the story on the gun, and I think it's the original gun because I can't think of any other reason for it being there.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
I'd love to see it.
That's some story. Yeah, it's over there. We'll haul it out.
All right. So there you go. This was your great-great-grandfather's rifle.
This is my great-great-grandfather's gun. I'm almost 99.99999% it is. And this would have come up from Los Gatos for 3 days, getting to the summit of Santa Cruz Mountains, because he would have had some kind of a weapon, some kind of something to get wild animals and meat or whatever to survive. And so this was on the rafters of my great uncle's house. When he died, I was able to get it and put the pieces back together and come up with this gun. So I would almost without hesitation say it was my great-great-grandfather's gun, John Martin Schultheis, and it's pronounced Schultheis, like neckties, Schultheis. The street that he made from the crest of the Summit Road down to the train station at Laurel is still there. If you look on the maps, California maps, you'll see Schultheis Road, only they spelled it wrong. It looks like Schulte, and all the locals call it Schulte Road. But it's correct to set the history straight. It's Schultheis. That's how my mother and my grandmother said it, and they're both from the family. So this is the Schultheis Road, and I'm sure this had been down Schultheis Road before too. It's a cap and ball gun. You put the, to start with, you pull the ramrod out, made out of wood. You can see the smoke from the end of it. It's been burnt from the heat and all. You get a little ball bearing, round piece of lead. You can see how big the hole is in the end of it. So you put your gunpowder. You have I didn't bring my powder horn because I didn't know it'd be showing this thing, but powder horn with powder in it. You would pour amount of powder in it. Then you would get the little lead shot, put a piece of oiled cloth around it, put it in the barrel, and then tamp it down real tight with this thing. And so this would tamp it in, and it's just barely long enough you can get a hold of it when it's down there. Don't lose it. And you'd have all that powder and the ball in it anyway, so it'd only go to about there probably. Pull this out and set it in here so you don't, I mean, if you missed your shot, you'd need to make another one. Take you about 30 seconds to reload it, so don't lay this down and lose it. And you're good to go. So then here's the shooting mechanism. You pull this back. You put the little cap on it here that'll make a spark, just like a cap gun, a little thing when you had it were a kid. You got 2 triggers here. This is a set trigger. You pull that, it clicks that trigger a little bit, and now it's a hair trigger. You can barely touch it, and it goes off. And hopefully you hit your bear. If you don't, the bear's going to get you. So that was Mountain Charlie's problem. It didn't quite level a bear. So this is the gun. This is what they used. And you should try carrying it around all day while you're hunting. You'd have to be in pretty good shape to even haul it all day. It probably weighs more than you would think. Big octagon barrel, and it's all steel.
Yeah, I can barely lift it. It's got to be like 30 or 40 pounds, I think.
I don't know.
And then to hold it level while you're trying to shoot, that's a whole nother thing.
It's something else. Those old guys were real men. And I rebuilt this thing in college when I found all the pieces. And so I polished it all up and got it all great looking new, which I shouldn't have done because it's not authentic look anymore, but it's still the same gun. And this I never touched the barrel, so that's totally authentic. And all the works, we got this all going, all works. So anyway, that's the story of the Schultheis gun. And I think it's all true.
I'm a witness to it.
I'd bet on it, yep, I'd bet on it. It's authentic. I didn't make any of that up.
Yeah. So you call this a cap and ball as
Cap and
opposed
ball.
to a flintlock?
Flintlock
Was
had a little
earlier.
thingy on top here with the little fingers, and you'd put a piece of flint in it and screw it down to hold it, and then you'd put the powder in here, and then whenever you pull the trigger, you would hope that it would make a spark. But with the cap, you knew it would make a spark because it had the gunpowder right in it. It's like a cap gun. Every time you shot one of those when you were a kid, it would pop. So this is cap and ball. This was a Cadillac of its day.
Yeah, that's a beauty.
Yeah, for killing bears. That's what you needed.
Yeah. And they'd use that to shoot deer too. You're saying they...
Oh, they use this
got
for everything.
deer?
Sure. Oh man, yeah, Mountain Charlie supposedly shot 3 deer that day before the
Yeah.
bear encounter, and then that's the story anyway. I've never shot this thing. I have not contacted the cap and ball, the early rifle people yet. Someday I will, and I'm sure it would be functional. I don't see why not, but I've never seen it, never shot it, so I can't witness that one. But I'll bet it'll work.
I bet it will after all the work you put into it. It's
Yeah.
nice and clean, and
Yeah, I think it'll work.
yeah.
Well, it'd take a pretty powerful jolt to blow this steel apart here with this octagonal barrel. There's a lot of steel in that thing. You're not gonna bend it over your knee, that's for sure.
Yeah. That's a weapon without even having bullets in it.
Yeah, it is. But it's pretty scary. I haven't been able to find they would make their own bullets. They'd melt the lead and pour it into a little thing like a pair of pliers. And I haven't found one of those yet. And I don't know what caliber this is, because I guess they did make different sizes, but it's not a very big ball. You figure your life is resting on that thing about the size of your little finger. A little round ball hitting a bear or hitting whatever it's after you. It's pretty thin odds.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, it really
make
is.
Sure you hit something
And if you
important.
miss, then you use this as a club. And supposedly, that's what Mountain Charlie was hitting a bear with his gun, and then it broke. So the bear got him. But then when they came back, supposedly Scott from Scott's Valley thought he was dead, so they didn't come back till the next morning to retrieve his body, and he was still alive. And so then they got him into his house and got Great-Grandma Schultheis to come and help him keep him alive.
Right.
And he went to Los Gatos or San Jose to find a doctor. They didn't have cell phones in those days. Couldn't just call for a doctor.
Right. So you had to ride your horse. It was probably 10 miles down the hill, down the mountain.
Long ways.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, and it was fairly soon after they'd moved up there. I forget what year Mountain Charlie got bit. Like, it was 1850. Mountain Charlie built his cabin, and my grandpa built his 1851. And so I think it was about 1852 or 3. And so there weren't many roads. You just have to go horseback. I don't think there was stagecoach or any of that stuff in those days. Yep.
They had to go down the coast to get to Santa Cruz then, probably from
Yeah, I don't know how they would,
San Francisco.
unless there were Indian trails through the, and animal trails. Animal trails.
Yeah.
Yep. Follow the animal trails. Well, most all the roads we have are originally from Indians and animal trails.
Yeah.
Shortest distance, that's what we used that for the roads.
Right.
That and the riverbeds.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, any more questions about the gun?
No, you had mentioned though that this is a type of gun they would have used in the Civil War.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So, and that you had to bring your own gun when you went to fight. They didn't necessarily issue one by then.
No, they didn't. They didn't have any army or anything. It was just plantations, and if they're coming and burning your stuff, you just take whatever you got to go defend yourself. If you got a gun, you go get your gun.
Yeah.
If you don't have a gun, you take a knife or take whatever you got.
Yeah.
So, yeah, a lot of Confederates. Whatever they had, they had. That's it.
So do you know, because then that was about the time Winchester started making guns. You know, Winchester rifle, or was that later?
Probably later.
Yeah, in the 1870s maybe.
I would imagine, because
Yeah.
I don't know what kind this is. It just says gain twist on it. I have not found anybody that knows that much about these guns.
Does it actually say gain twist?
Yeah, it does somewhere. I found that word, gain twist.
Like G-A-I-N?
Gain, gain twist.
Okay.
It's a step up from just a straight bore.
Oh, and that's, yeah, the twist they're talking about is the rifling then.
Yeah, inside of it. So this ball would be way down here. Okay, you rolling?
Yep.
Okay, this is another artifact. It's not a gun, but it's a memorial from my family members going back a long ways. This little cup was given by my grandmother to her mother and father on their 50th wedding anniversary. And so I'll read what it says on here. It's hard to make it out. It says, presented to mother and father, 50th wedding anniversary, June 2nd, 1923. So in a few months, it'll be 2023, and I'll be up at the ranch that day and celebrate, and my family will be invited. And then was donated by Bessie and Billy, it says, and so it's from my grandparents to the daughter of John and Susan Schulthies. So this was given to the daughter of the lady that saved Mountain Charlie's life, kept him alive till the doctors got there. And my grandmother is the one that gave them to him on their 50th wedding anniversary. So that's kind of an interesting little chunk of history that will be 150 years celebrating their wedding anniversary. And so this is a little schematic I did. So this shows the lady we're talking about that saved Mountain Charlie's life. This is her daughter, and that's who that is sent to, her daughter.
That's Alice.
Alice, and then this is her daughter that sent it to her mother, and this is my grandmother.
And that's Bessie.
And that's Bessie, yeah. And then my mother, I didn't get her name in here. But anyway, that goes clear back. This goes clear back to Mountain Charlie's daughter. So that's quite a little chunk. And it's tangible. It's still here. It's real. It's not made up.
Yeah, and it's in beautiful condition.
Well, it's been dropped or something through the years. It's a little bit screwed up, but yeah. It's original. It didn't get polished up like the gun did. So it's a real thing.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions?
Let's see. So, let's see. This starts with...
Okay, that schematic there is a time chart that goes vertical down with the passing of time, and then you read it across and see what happened, and the dates are all up here.
Okay.
The major things that happened at the ranch since John Martin Schultheis and his wife settled there back in 1851.
And it starts out with the Costandan.
Yeah, the Indians.
Costandan Indians.
That's the name of their band, or whatever you would call the kind of Indians that were there for hundreds of years, the tribes, yeah.
Ah. And then Lagoon.
The lagoon is still on the property. It's still there. They tried to sell it once, and the county wouldn't let them do it because it was a low, wet spot. So the purchase fell through, and they never built a house there. They were going to fill it, but it's still there. If it rains, probably got a lot of water in it right now.
Yeah. And is it okay to go up there and see, or you probably need to get permission, or?
Well, the owner of it, like I mentioned, is Mason Taylor Ranch, and Roger Mason is the owner, and he lets me go anytime, and I bring my family. I always let him know, but he's definitely a person interested in the history of it. And so if you're interested, he would be real happy to let you come up there. The gentleman that lives in the log cabin itself still is in charge of it, so I let him know too that I'm coming. But he and his family live there and take care of it for Mason Taylor Ranch.
Okay. So, and then it says here, John Martin Schultheis and Susan E. Byerly.
Byerly was her maiden name, yes.
Yeah.
Susan.
And then she later became Schultheis.
Yeah, when she married John, she lost Byerly and became Schultheis.
Okay.
And that's my whole generation is on the ladies, the woman's side. So my name is Gerald Schultheis Averill Romes Park, because all of mine were on the female side, so they lost their Schultheis name. And when her daughter married Averill, and she lost her Schultheis name, and then when my grandma married Romes, she lost the Averill name and became Romes, and then when my mom married, she became Park. So I'm a man, so I still have Park.
Right, okay.
But all of those names changed, but it's the same lineage, so that's why I delineated that.
Yeah. And so you were saying, I can't remember whether we got this on tape or not, but so you were saying that Susan married John, and then they had 4 children, 3 of them died, and then she came over by wagon train to California with her 5-year-old son.
Right. And
but John didn't come?
What?
Or John
he was here already.
Oh, okay.
He had her come out.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
So she was on her own, driving a team of like
came
4.
With the group.
Yeah.
With a bunch of horses.
Okay.
And delivered some child on the trip coming out here from the stage, covered wagons even, yeah.
That's right, because she was the midwife, right?
She was the go-to. Tough little woman.
Yeah. And then 3-day trip from Los Gatos up to the summit. Where they built the log cabin.
I'm sure that gun went.
Yeah. And I wonder though, if they had the wagon, did they take the wagon up there, do you think?
Yeah, they drug it up. They had the ox take it up so they would have some furniture and something to put in the house. Otherwise, there's no way to get it there unless you build your own stuff.
And then,
So the first time, I guess, this is before Mountain Charlie married, so I guess it's the first time anybody needed any wide cargo truck to get up there.
Right. Probably the first furniture to be up there.
Yeah, first person ever, before Highway 17 was in for sure.
Yeah. Mountain Charlie probably made his own furniture.
Yeah, he probably did. And Mountain Charlie built all the roads. He was a road builder.
Oh.
And then he got into electricity in the valley and was part of the power system down there. Yeah, he did pretty good. He was an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I had no idea. So, and then he had it was a toll road.
Yeah, when he and Scott, when they built it, it was a toll road. At each end they would pay, going or coming. And
okay.
So then that became part of the California road system.
Right.
Yeah.
So was it a toll road all the way over to Los Gatos?
I would imagine, or at least to Scotts Valley.
Yeah.
Probably from Santa Cruz, they had roads up to Felton and Boulder Creek and whatever, but not over the mountain. There's no need to go over the mountain, hardly.
Right. A lot of people still don't go over the mountain.
Yeah, well, all of the trade went shipped to San Francisco. Went from Santa Cruz to San Francisco. That's where all the redwood trees went after the earthquake, 1906.
Yeah.
Was all of the rebuilt San Francisco, and all went on ship. And once the railroad went through in the tunnels, and it all went on the tunnels.
Right, that's right.
What financed it all. Yeah. And then when they cut down all the trees, they used it to just bring vacationers in for weekends, for parties and dances and all. And then after the earthquake collapsed a lot of it, and they never, well, they did make it into it was all small gauge train originally.
Right.
And then they went to the full-size track later, and then when the earthquake came, they just gave up. It
Right.
wasn't profitable enough to keep working on it.
Yeah. So do you know when the railroad went through the mountain?
The tunnels, I think it was about 1870s, 1880s.
Okay.
1880s, I think. I don't have that date down.
So up until that time, that's where John was still he's still planting, growing orchard and that kind of
the
thing.
family was still, yeah.
But he probably had to take everything into Santa Cruz at that point. That was before.
Yeah, I don't know what he.
The
I
railroad.
don't know how he got his produce out before the railroad came through.
Yeah.
Ship it down to Los Gatos, probably.
Yeah.
That way. Don't know.
Huh.
That's more stuff to learn.
Yeah.
Don't know that all.
Well, it sounds like I have some exploring to do.
Well, every time you learn one thing, you find there's 8 things you don't know. So you've got,
That's right.
you got
I know it, like
research
snowballs.
them too. Yeah, it does. It really does.
Yeah.
But it's great to get started.
Yep, exactly. And this is a good starting point.
Well, yeah, you learn a little bit. And if it gets your interest, then you'll work on it some more.
Yeah. Yeah, well, thanks a lot.
Well,
I
it's
really appreciate that.
been a pleasure to share my heritage with you.
Yeah, well,
And I hope some of your follow-up people that watch these things or whatever, that they get inspired too.